Live with CDP Sports Talk, a weekly sports and entertainment podcast sponsored by Barry Cullen Chevrolet. Live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and LinkedIn. And on audio via Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, Anchor FM, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Radio Public, and TuneIn. Now, here's your host, Chris Palme.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Season 8, Episode 12, overall 397 of Live with CDP Sports Talk, sponsored by Barry Cullen Chevrolet Dealership at 905 Woodlawn Road West in the Gulf Auto Mall. Check out barrycullen.com for the newest selection of new and pre-owned GM vehicles, or give them a call at 519-824-0210. or email them at info@barrycullen.com. As always, Live with CDP Sports Talk is on weeknights from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern on radio station WQEE 99.1 FM in Noonan, Georgia, the home of Southern Talk and Sports. I hope everyone's doing well on this Monday, May 13th, 2024. For those mothers who are watching this live stream or on audio, in case I missed you from yesterday, I want to wish all the mothers a happy belated Mother's Day, and I hope you had a great Sunday with your families and your kids as well. I'm looking forward to tonight's show with my guest. This is his second appearance on our show. Just waiting for him to come on. His name is Brendan Glasheen. He is an ESPN play-by-play announcer for the National Lacrosse League, and he's a radio personality on 98.5, the Sports Hub in Boston. And he also does play-by-play for the G League's Maine Celtics, as well as the WNBA's Connecticut Sun as well. And we're hoping to have Brandon on tonight to talk a little bit about the NLL finals, the National Lacrosse League finals 2024, between the upstart Albany Firewolves, who are making their first ever trip to the finals, against the Buffalo Bandits, who are in their fifth NLL finals since 2016. 2016 they lost, 2019 they lost, 2022 they lost to Colorado. Last year they defeated Colorado in the rematch in 2023, and the Bandits are looking to win back-to-back titles for the first time since 92-93. When they won their first titles, and we'll see what happens this Friday night. First game is Friday night at 7 o'clock at the MVP Arena in Albany, New York, and then Saturday night game 2 is at the KeyBank Center. And I've got my guest coming on right now, and we're going to talk a little lacrosse with him. Good evening, Brandon. How you doing?
What's up, Chris? Thanks for having me. Looking forward to these finals. This bye week has got me itching, like
absolutely
about to start this thing.
Thank you for doing this tonight, because your Celtics are playing Cleveland right now in Game 4 on the road. And I'm going to be honest, as an outside observer, I'm obviously a Pistons fan. That's another mess there. But I find the Celtics play better on the road than they do at home. And who would have thought that in the future? Because in the past, the Celtics were at the Garden. Okay, you're not going to beat them in Boston in the playoffs. But it just seems like this team plays a little differently on the road.
Yeah, I think that's been the case with the hockey team too. I don't know what it is. I think there's more of there's a lot of ways you can look at it. I think when you go on the road, and in a lot of cases with the Celtics and the Bruins, mostly the Celtics though, they've got the home court advantage going into a series, and they've really struggled in game 2s of their playoff series, whether it be a conference final, it could be a first round series, could be a semifinal, which they're in right now. I don't know what it is. I think, what it might be is when you go into your home arena and you're so amped up, and if it doesn't go well right away, I think the fans get antsy. They get upset with the officials. So then the players almost get distracted by that. Whereas when you go into a road environment and all of those advantages you have at home are now against you, there's just more of a focus level, I think, where there's outside distractions. I mean, the Bruins being down 3-1 now, the Bruins have actually been staying in a hotel, like in Boston, not in their own homes. I think to add a level of focus and leave outside distractions. And that's no disrespect to their families and whatnot. It's just a matter of getting right for a playoff game. So I don't know what it is. You work so hard all year to get that home court. And I know we'll probably dive into some of this about the NLL playoffs and home floor. And that's interesting in this series, right? With Buffalo and how their fans travel. But I think we're seeing that it's not just in Boston, but I think in pro sports overall, the home court thing and hockey, playoff hockey, I think it's eliminated entirely. But the importance of home court has changed quite a bit. And I don't know if that's a knock on the fan experience and the desperation. Maybe it's just because it's really, I would also add this, especially in Boston, maybe it's different elsewhere. It's expensive to go to these games.
Oh, yes.
So maybe that's part of it too. Like you get a different crowd for the playoffs because you got people that can go deep into the pockets. So you don't get as much of a rowdy crowd. It might just be more of a casual crowd. Like, oh, look, I got a chance to get some tickets tonight. I know a guy or whatever. Maybe that's what it is too, but we're spoiled around here, Chris. We're spoiled. They've won so much over the 2 decades here that maybe that people are just complacent. I don't know what it is.
12 championships in the city of Boston since 2001. But Brandon, I'm an old timer, and here's my other point. You made a great point about the ticket prices being expensive. Remember back in the 70s and 80s, or even the 90s, some of these arenas really gave that home team an advantage, like the original Boston Garden, the original Forum in LA, the Palace where the Pistons played.
Right.
All these arenas and stadiums now are pretty well all the same, except for like Wrigley Field and Fenway Park and Dodger Stadium. A lot of these new arenas for basketball and hockey are all the same.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's something to think about.
Anyways, I wanted to talk to you about the National Lacrosse League finals between I call them the New England Patriots of the National Lacrosse League, the Buffalo Bandits taking on the upstart Albany Firewolves. And I wanted to get your thoughts, Brandon, on this upcoming series between these two franchises.
Yeah, where to begin, right? It's kind of a David versus Goliath feeling to it. Let's keep in mind, right? Like Buffalo and Albany both have 10 first-round picks on their rosters. Now, Buffalo's first-round classes or first-round picks are a lot further along in their careers. And it was only until last year, and I cross sports all the time. Some people don't like that. Some people can handle it. It's kind of a complicated science trying to cross sports because every league is different. But the Bandits kind of reminded me they finally got over the hump, right? They're in the finals for a 4th straight year. But they got there a couple times. Got there against Calgary. Got there against Colorado. Couldn't quite get over the hump. Now they got a guy in the goal like Matt Vince, who's won in other areas before he arrived in Buffalo. But their offensive core, hadn't won yet. And they've had unbelievable individual years the last half decade in Dane Smith, Josh Byrne, go right down the list. They had not overcome that. But once you win that one championship and you know what it takes, your psyche, your mindset, any sort of adversity you face, you're ready for it. Because I got the chip. I know what it takes. You got there. And that's what the goal has been in Buffalo the last couple of years. So it doesn't surprise me that they're back. I am a little surprised. I'm impressed. I'm not so much surprised, but I'm impressed how, you get into a back and forth tight game against a Georgia team that gives them some fits, and Lyle's all time. And Lyle's energy to me is infectious across the room. I think Eddie Como's a great coach. He's transitioned well from Poulin to Dobson in the goal, a young goaltender in Dobson who should have a great career. I thought goalies were outstanding in the quarterfinal round. I would say the same about Nick Damoud in Panther City, gave the San Diego Seals all they could handle. But it's a long way of explaining. You grind that one out. Then you got to go to Toronto, except this time Toronto's got the home floor advantage. You blast them in the first period. This goes back to what we were just discussing about home floor advantage. Buffalo fans travel well, and that game fell over after one quarter in game one. And then in game two, you're trailing by, I think it was 8-4 at one point.
8-4 going into the fourth quarter.
And they go on a freaking rampage, which they have proven they can do that. Flip a switch, and they're cool, calm, and collected again, knowing in the back of your brains, this is nothing we haven't faced before. We've been here before. We know what it takes. So who knows what happens with Toronto in that situation, right? Because that's tough. You have one of the best regular seasons in league history. And you have Nick Rose is probably going to win goaltender of the year, I think, or he'll win MVP because if Del Bianco just won an MVP, maybe that translates now. Goalies should be considered for MVPs. But Nick Rose had an unbelievable year. They got Mark Matthews, as we know. The defense is solid in the back end. And now here you are in a finals against a team like Albany. I've had the pleasure of covering this team now the last couple of years. And I saw rock bottom last year at 3-15. But what I kept hearing from folks in the organization, the coaching staff, starts with Glenn Clark. Just wait and see. We had to build this from the ground up when we were in New England because Glenn was in New England when he wasn't there the first season, but he got there the second year the franchise was in New England. He had a 5-year plan. We're going to build this up the right way and then cash in at certain points to go get a Callum Crawford, go get a Joe Resiteritz, go get Stefan LeBlanc. And they were 8-3 in that 2019-2020 season. And then all hell broke loose and we ran into a pandemic. And then they had to retool. You change market, free agency. It's tough. So they said, we're going to build this from the ground up. We're going to draft. We're going to develop and try to build it just like those teams and just like the team they're going to face this coming Friday. All those guys have come up through the league playing together. That's kind of the recipe Albany has cooked up. And here we are in a spot where I keep hearing this, and I know it's cliche, and they got nothing to lose. These guys just play, man. They just play. The thought process is like, who's next? They got through a Halifax team and a one and done, a team desperate to win a championship. Hadn't done it yet. San Diego.
Very good team. Very good team.
Very good team. And all-timers offensively on their team. Very similar build in San Diego. Now, they made some moves like Brody comes out of retirement. You go get Kyle Rubish. You have a young goaltender who had a breakout season. And Dixon, Doby, go right down the list of their offensive firepower. Very similar build in San Diego. And they took it right to them, man. So here they are in a spot where they beat Buffalo twice in the regular season. Since Glenn Clark's arrived in Albany, they've always kind of given Buffalo, like, it's never like, don't get me wrong, like Buffalo's all time and they've beat Albany a few times in previous postseasons, but it always feels like because of the former regime where you had the conferences, remember going back now a few years now, there were divisions. Buffalo was a team you'd play 2 or 3 times a year. So when you build your team, you got to think, if we're going to go to if we're going to win the whole thing, we're going to at some point have to play Buffalo. And it's a fearless group. It's all come together. Glenn Clark's done a tremendous job. They've hit on their draft picks. They've come further along, faster along than I think they thought. They've admitted that in all the media avail you've probably heard and watched the last couple of weeks. And it's been a pretty fun team to follow here this year. It's been really cool to watch this turnaround.
Before we get back to the Firewolves and Bandits, I wanted to get your thoughts on this as an outsider or just an outside perspective. The Toronto Rock, they've had a lot of talented teams the last 10 years, and they to me, they remind me of the Toronto Maple Leafs of the lacrosse.
Jeez.
Where do the Rock go from here? Because they went 15-3 in the regular season, and they could beat every team in the league, but they just do not match up well with the Buffalo Bandits.
It's a great question. I don't know. Nick Rose is, I think goaltenders have proven in this league they can play for a long time. And who knows what Nick put together. And Nick really the last handful of years has been dynamite. He's been elite. If it hadn't been for Doug Jamieson going back to the 1920 year or even Del Bianco last year, Rose is still, his name's at the top of that list every year for elite goaltending. I think what they've proven is they're very consistent. They don't wow you in many areas, but they're so buttoned up mostly top to bottom. But where I feel where it can get problematic is, and they can always get free agents. Like free agents want to go to Toronto and play in Toronto. They got Mark Matthews in a trade. They signed Boucher. Schreiber's been in and out. Schreiber's injury history is something that has to come up because that's your core. Corey Small's getting older. So I don't know. If I have this right, Challen Rogers is one of their only first round picks on the roster. And Challen Rogers was a first round pick 8 years ago. So they've got to get younger, I think, offensively. and try to build it up so you've got some continuity and you can't just plug and play. We're finding it now in pro sports. The NBA does this a lot. Just trying to plug and play stars. You should win games. You should be a playoff team. But when you get into spots, when you face a team that has a lot of continuity and reps playing together, stuff, Matt, and playing together in big games, which Buffalo has proven with that core, and you stay the course, that experience together proves to be very, very important at this point in the year. So, like I said, man, that's tough. I mean, at the very least, you hope to you force a game 3, and then you get into a do or die game 3 at the very least. Then at least you can say, all right, hey, that's a really good team. And I'm sure Toronto's thinking, getting the 1 seed, getting the number 1 overall seed, we got to get Buffalo in the conference in the semifinals. They couldn't have loved that. Now, I'm sure their thought going into it was, hey, we were probably going to have to play them at some point, so let's go. Bring it on. We're different. That's tough. I don't know. It's a great question, but I think the best. I like their defense. Challen, who's battled injuries, Brad Cree, Mitch DeSnew. They've got dudes that have played together now. So I say all that about playing together, experience playing together. Their back ends had that. Offensively, not as much the case because they retooled it. Bushi, small year 2, Matthews year 1, Schreiber's in and out. It's kind of clunky offensively. And when you're in a situation like flip it, right? So Buffalo goes up, Buffalo's down 8-4 and they go on a rampage. They go on a run. We never saw that kind of run out of Toronto when they trailed, whatever it was, 8-zip. Not I forget what the score, 7-zip, whatever the score was in game 1.
Yeah, it was like I think it was 8-0 at one point.
They couldn't rip off
4 or 5 straight goals
in a short window. And I'm not saying like the way they played all regular season, they didn't have to do things like that. Most of the year, and this proves to be true to win games in the regular season. If you get a lead and you're sound in the back end, and you have a great goaltender like Nick Rose, you'll win a lot of games. But what happens when you play from behind, which can happen against a really good offense like Buffalo? So they've got some. I wouldn't put Toronto at the top of the list. Like Seattle, San Diego, and Halifax, I think have more glaring questions because of how old they are. At the very least, Toronto, Matthews is older, but he's not as old as those other guys. And same can be said for Corey Small. But I'm curious if they try to go a little younger. If anything, Chris, it kind of Albany has laid a framework for the rest of the league that there is benefits by building it. And I don't, this is going to come off like it's a shot, but they're doing it the right way. And Buffalo did that too. They're just further along in that process. But as we said, 4th finals, and they're 1-2 in their last 3 appearances. Well, it took them time to get there, and they all came up together on the offensive end. And then they can retool and pick their spots about adding a Paul Dawson or adding
Connor Farrell.
Sure, adding a Farrell midway through the year. But if you have your core built through the draft and these guys come up and clearly we've all watched it now. Byrne and Smith feed off each other. And they've had the luxury of playing together in the summer and the PLL as well. That's an added bonus. But I think I'm not saying completely rip it apart because they've got really good players, Toronto, but there are some better, like building it up together when you get in a big spot, that keeps you pretty connected. So that therefore, no matter what the situation is in a given game, it's not all just going to fall apart. And that it felt like that's what happened in 2 different ways. You got down big in game 1 and you say, okay, whatever, burn the tape. We're moving on to the next game. And then you build a lead like that. And then it was a collapse. Good question. I don't know. I think, but going younger, I think now that might be a step. Maybe it's that cliche of you take 1 step back, take 2 steps forward, but they've got to get younger, I think, on offense and get more cheap goals. And, you got to score in the quarterfinal round. We weren't saying this, right? If you got to 10 in the quarterfinal round, you're winning the game because goaltending was elite in a one and done game. But now you got to get 12 to 13 goals. It feels that's like the sweet spot of a number to win these games over the course of a series. If you're playing another elite offense, and they couldn't do that, they couldn't get cheap ones. So
covering the Bandits this year, there was talk from the Bandit land about Matt Vince. Obviously, his age, he had some injury problems, but
Yeah.
he's completely healthy now. And I really think the addition of Dawson on defense and Bomberry coming back, Farrell, who's helped out with the the face-offs, which I think are huge, especially in the game of lacrosse for that extra position. I just think he's just turned it on at the right time. And the Bandits, I believe they've won their last 6 or 7 games in a row. And in the last 5 games, Brandon, they have not given up 10 goals. They've held the opposition to 9, 7, 4, 6, or whatever. And they held the Toronto Rock to 12 goals in 2 games, which is 6 per game. So to me, their defensive play in the last month or so has been the biggest turnaround for this Bandits team.
Yeah, they've been sound, right? It starts with Priolo, who kind of sets the tone. Well, it starts with Vince, and then Priolo is an extension of the goal. Again, we talked about it, continuity. You know, Bomberry's been giving him something here in this postseason. Nick Weiss has been a fine player for them. You add Paul Dawson into the mix, and they've over the years, Buffalo has accumulated some younger guys on their defense, and you can go young in your back end if you're sound in the goal and you've got someone like a Steve Priolo who could still keep everyone connected. Again, easy to say this now because they're in the finals, but same with Albany. Like they've got, Doug Jamieson. He's no longer a puppy. He's a dog now. He's been in the league now 7 years. They drafted him when he was just a kid, but he's come up through the league, and then like Nick Tchaikovsky is a guy who's been outstanding for Albany, and he's 27 years old, been in the league 5 years. For them, like Tchaikovsky in year 5 in the league he's their vet in the back end with Leo Sturris, who won a championship in Georgia. Colton Watkinson assumed the captain duties from Brett Manny. But yeah, Buffalo athletic, they're big and athletic, and they've improved with their athleticism in their back end. I think that's fair to say. I think they would agree. Like their defense has been kind of their backbone. And then when you need Dane and you need Josh Byrne, Chase Fraser, Nanakoke, Kluche, you need those guys to go on a run like they did the other night. They have that capability. And their offense, rightfully so, gets a lot of attention because they're stars. And Dane, I think the way Dane has just, like, if Dane Smith wanted to, he could score as many goals as he wants per game. But the way he gives back, he understands the idea of involving everybody is so important to go on a deep run and win a championship. And like I said, getting over that hump last year, I think has taught them a lot of habits and championship habits to know what it's going to take. And Josh Burns benefited from that with the 8 goals to lead the way.
I wanted to say one thing. Dane Smith reminds me of a former NHL superstar, Mario Lemieux. Mario Lemieux could score 60, 70, 80 goals if he wanted to, but Dane, I think, gets more satisfaction out of getting assists and making his line mates better. And I just think him and Josh Burns are probably the best 1-2 punch in the league. I wanted to ask you this too, Brandon. This delay was due to the MVP arena in Albany not being available this weekend.
Yeah.
Or last weekend. Past. I forgot. I keep thinking it's the weekend. It's Monday. Who did that favor? Did that help Albany or did that help Buffalo? Because I know both teams are coming in with momentum, but I just wanted to get your thoughts on this extra time off before the finals.
I think I think for the old, and I put old in air quotes, is I think this Buffalo team, outside of the goalie, most of these guys are in like the primes of their career. Like Buffalo is not as old as a Halifax or as old as a San Diego or even like Toronto, right? But Albany got pretty beat up in that San Diego game, and that introduces what happened with the whole Stotts thing at the end, and who knows how that kind of plays out. I'm not sure if there's any news on it, but anyway, 2 physical teams, San Diego and Halifax, like in back-to-back weeks. And consider Albany played Friday in San Diego, and then you got to turn it around and then go play back at home at 3 Eastern on Sunday. So I don't care how young they are. Their average age is like 25 and a half years old. They got pretty beat up over those 3 games, Halifax, and then playing 3 games in 7 days. Now, I understand Buffalo is home, so you host Georgia, then you make that short drive back and forth from Toronto. But for a younger team that's been sizzling and they've all of a sudden found a way to score on the power play, found a way to be elite on the penalty kill, which were 2 categories they ranked dead last in the league. That's why I think folks are even blown away. Never mind their youth, but how they were getting away with those 2 deficiencies and still found their way into the NLL finals. They've been better in special teams in this postseason and making the opponent pay. So an aggressive team like San Diego and Halifax, 2 teams that are at the top of the league in penalty minutes, they made them pay. And that's where there was separation at the end of those games. I think I joked and said, like, Albany's like that little brother who just doesn't stop nagging the older brother. And it just got to a boiling point with both Halifax and San Diego, where those games, those closeout games, game 2, San Diego, and then the Sunday game, where it just all kind of fell apart for the opponent. Buffalo, as I said, has been there before. They're a little more disciplined. I saw after, I think it was after Buffalo's win against Toronto at home in game 2, Dane Smith kind of threw a little bit of a dig, like, hey, these young guys don't know exactly what it's like to be here yet. And what I've loved about this Albany team is they're not overconfident. Like, they're confident on the floor. There's a line of like being cocky and arrogant, and they're not that. Like, I think that they've never, like, when they went through their slide at the end of the year and they lost 5 in a row, I think they were looking at the standings and they got caught, not thinking like, look how good we are, we can take nights off. It was more like oh no, like, we're this good, we have a standard, we better live up to it. It was more like it was almost like they were being humble about it. Not like, oh, look, we're this good now, like reading our press clippings. I think it was more so the other thing. They were reading their stuff. I think that's very true. But they felt this pressure. We got to host a home game. Like, now we're expected to be good. Now everyone knows we're good. There's film out on us now. We're no longer a secret. We're not sneaking up on people. So, and that, I think, again, I'm biased. I've been around it all starts with Glenn Clark and his staff, Clem Durazio, Daryl Gibson. These Daryl and Glenn Clark won championships together in Toronto. They know what it takes too. But yeah, it's a different beast. It's certainly a different beast against a team like Buffalo that's overcome the championship kind of bug, and they got over it last year.
Overall assessment on this Firewolves coaching staff and the job they've done with this roster with Glenn Clark and his staff, and thoughts on John Tavares, because I mentioned this to Bud Bailey, who covers the team for the Buffalo Sports page. He's a longtime legend in Buffalo sports. I said to Bud that I think this is one of John Tavares' best coaching jobs, with the adversity and some of the injuries that the Bandits were facing this year, especially losing Vince for, I think, 2 or 3 games.
It's funny. You said this earlier that you compare the Bandits to the Patriots. This particular Bandits team this year, they got a little Kansas City Chiefs feel to them. Like, remember the Chiefs this year? Everyone kind of buried them early in the year.
Yes,
4-4, 500. Oh, well, they even make the playoffs. Like, what's wrong with them? They finally won a title, and now they're kind of like, all right, we can just coast. Well, as you said, Buffalo's gone on a bit of a run since their 500 start to the season. They were 5-6. And like you said, they've won 7 straight now, 4 in the final 4 of the regular season. And then they've won 3 playoff games. So they've won 7 in a row. And then to wrap the regular season, they won 5 of their last 6. And one of those losses was to Panther City in an overtime game. And even their loss before that to Vancouver was a 1-goal game. And Buffalo, one of the things I loved about them last year, and that's why I thought San Diego kind of maybe have turned a corner, and that why they were going to be dangerous, was because their success in 1-goal games last year was excellent. I think Buffalo's record going into the playoffs, or at least going into the Rochester quarterfinal game last year, they were like 5-1 in 1-goal games. They knew how to win tight playoff atmosphere like games. So yeah, that's how this Buffalo team kind of feels to me. That they know when to pick it up and put their foot down, and they ramped it up at the right time, and that's all that matters at this point in the year. And then, as we mentioned just a moment ago with Albany, and I've picked at this now a little bit throughout some of your questions in some of this interview. They lost 5 in a row, but then they stuck with it. I think they grew from some of those losses. Like they had a loss to Toronto in early April, and it was a 9-6 game. They had looks on offense, just didn't bury them, but I thought they played Toronto really hard. They lost a 1-goal game to Calgary on the road, and Calgary had a really nice second half, even though they didn't get in the playoffs. Calgary proved to be kind of a tough out at the end of the year. And that's the league, right? When you're in a league where there's only 15 teams, there's enough talent across the league where you're going to get everyone's best shot. When it's a once-a-week NFL feel to it. And that's what these unified standings brought to the table. But I brought up what happened in New England before the team moved from New England to Albany. What they were 8-3, first place. Glenn Clark had he had retooled that program, if you will. I'm using a college term like program. And they were much older in New England. They had some pedigree. They had guys in the primes of their career, and then that all gets ripped away from you because of the pandemic. Then you change location. You go, I think they were 9-9 in year one, and then, of course, you bottom out last year. And Glenn, as I mentioned, was a champion player in Toronto, and, he never had a year like that. As a player, he's been in the league. He's been a part of the league now he's been in lacrosse for 20 years, 25 years. It's like I've never had a year like that. I've at the very least been 500, kind of hanging in the mix, never bottomed out like that. And of course, the prize was Dyson Williams, number 1 overall pick. And I'll be like, in our broadcast, we barely even talk about Dyson because this team this year was so dynamite and so fun offensively that you wouldn't be giving these guys their proper due. And I understand the league perspective was they got Dyson Williams coming in, but week to week doing games for the Firewolves, you're like, hey, that's next year. Like this team right now this year is focused on competing, and they thought going in, hey, let's be in the mix, very least be 500-ish, push for a playoff spot, and just be a pain in the neck to play against. And Alex Simmons and Ty Kurtz, their growth in year one, they've played extremely well off of one another. So the coaching staff, to answer your question specifically, the staff has taken it week by week, knew it was going to be a long process with these guys. Now, I would think they would admit this too. When you start 6-0, there's some belief in that room. Like if they didn't get off to a good start, who knows how the year would have unfolded. But getting some buy-in from your Colton Watkinsons, from your Doug Jamesons, Joe Nardella, Nick Chakowski, guys that were there the year before and saw the worst of the worst, winning some games early in the year. And 6-0 is great. If they had started maybe 4-2 or 3-3, you're like, okay, we got a season here. We're not done after week 10. Like we got a season. And then I think, as we talked about, the book's out. Teams are now game planning against you. You got Buffalo early in the year. You got Halifax early in the year. And then you trip up against San Diego, you get held to 7. Then you have the little losing streak. But then Dougie was consistent in the goal, had a great year. And Dougie, almost the inverse of what happened to Dougie 4 or 5 years ago. Nick Rose getting all the headlines. Doug Jameson's kind of flying in the rear view like, oh, wait a minute. Dougie's actually having a really good year. Nick Rose is finally, I think, going to get his flowers. I think. I don't know that for sure. I think he's going to be goaltender of the year, I think. Or MVP, whatever it ends up being with the voting. But staff's done a tremendous job. They've had the long haul in mind. And even some of these, consider this too, Chris. Like, they've nailed their draft picks in Simmons, Kurtz. Will Johansson missed the year with the ACL, but Chakowski was a draft pick in New England. Mike Burns been an impact player, draft pick. Doug Jameson, draft pick. Colton Watkinson, draft pick. Patrick Kazchuk was a draft pick. Jackson Nishimura, draft pick. Guys that have impacted their team in transition, in their back end. But then how they've managed these fringe pieces, like Marshall Paulus was acquired via trade from Sask, had a pretty good end of the season last year. And not many people probably remember that because Albany was dead and buried. They were out of it. Ethan Walker was a first-round pick, played 10 games for Georgia. Then he was part of last year's team. Ethan Walker is the glue of their offense. So Simmons and Kurtz get the headlines because they're putting up unreal rookie numbers. Ethan Walker's a 26-year-old. He's their most experienced offensive player. They completely flipped their whole offense. Walker was the one guy that came back of their 6 on offense that play most nights. Walker has been outstanding. He's got a professional approach to his game, very buttoned up. He can be combative on the floor, but his workman-like mentality is like an extension of Glenn Clark. Travis Longboat tore his ACL in training camp last year, missed the season. He played every game this year, didn't miss a game. That's a great story. Like, and he was a great player in Six Nations, had great summers there, can score goals. He's a water bug out there. Nathan Grennan, he's the kind of guy that if he's on your team, you love him, but if he's not on your team, you hate that guy. And he's just getting inside the opponent's head, fulfilled his role. I could go on and on about individual, but like just how they've pieced it together. Really fine job by the staff, and they deserve a lot of credit. The players play, the players develop, the players score the goals. Defensemen stop the goals. Doug Jameson's Doug Jameson, no question. Execution matters, but Glenn was process oriented, and I know it's cliche, but they really have taken it 1 week at a time, and they made some bold moves the last couple of, even the year that they went 3-15. They moved on from Andrew Q. They moved on from Riley O'Connor, Connor Kelly this past year, like who was their leading scorer if they brought him back. You know, Kitchen and Tanner Thompson were guys they didn't have this year. So they made some bold moves that they said, we're going to go young. And they relied on some of their gut feelings on a Walker being a leader and some of the most of their D that they brought back. So they've done it. They've pushed all the right buttons, man. And it's a credit to them. They've got a pretty good read of what works and what doesn't.
The difference in the series is the 2 wins Albany won. What kind of an adjustments do you see from John Tavares and the Buffalo Bandits? Obviously, they're going to break down those 2 games, and to me, the Bandits are a much different team than those 2 games they lost to Albany. But I just wanted to get your thoughts on what do you think you'll see more from the Bandits, and do you see this being high scoring series, or do you think it'll be a low scoring defensive battle?
I don't know. Doug Jameson maybe had his best game as a pro against Halifax. You hold the team to 3 goals, second fewest in league history. That's up there, right? It's got to be number 1 of his 7 years. And Vince has been proven champion in Buffalo, champion in Rochester. Got 2 elite goaltenders, and like you had mentioned earlier, you're pretty high on this Buffalo defense, the way they've played here in this playoffs. But also, it's kind of been their backbone and what. For the totality of the year, as great as their name recognition is on offense, that's been kind of their backbone, and that's what wins in the NLL at the end of the day. And timely goal scoring, like timely goals matter. And if you can beat a team by scoring 20, then no kidding. I mean, you take that any given night. But in the playoffs, when it's a little bit more honed in, and it's a little more the scout is a little more focused, and at the end of the day, when you're in a finals, you're playing a pretty compelling, legit opponent. I think you throw out, if you're Buffalo, you throw out that first game in Albany because Albany was no one knew about Albany. No one had the tape on Simmons, Kurtz, and Walker playing together in Longboat. So it was a new look. How do you scout that? How do you can watch their tape and watch how they performed in Ontario when they played summer ball. But as a collective, you didn't really know much. And Albany has benefited from using their speed. They're not the biggest team. Buffalo's got the size advantage, no question about it. So I think Albany snuck up on people by literally being fast. So they didn't really sneak up on, in their mind, they didn't sneak up on people, but no longer are they sneaking up on you with their speed and their tenacity and the battle of attrition that is a game in the National Lacrosse League. Second game, Ty Kurtz goes off and scores 6 goals and had one of his best outings of the year. And that's where I think that's when Buffalo was in kind of their rut, right? That put Buffalo at 5-5, and they lost the following week to Vancouver. So Albany hasn't faced Buffalo yet this year, fully clicking. It's a very different Buffalo team. And Albany, the way they're playing right now is a lot of what we saw early in the year. And that's all. I think a lot of this has to do with matchups. Like I said earlier, I think Halifax and San Diego are 2 very similar teams. They want to make it physical. They want to compress you and make it so you can't space out offensively. So I'm curious as to what Buffalo's plan might be. I think the key to the series is going to be if Albany can score and how legit is Buffalo's defense. I think Dane and Josh Byrne are going to get theirs. Dougie will do his job to hold them in check, or at the very least contain them. But can Albany score? Can Albany score at the volume that they did in that San Diego 2-game series? That's the key to the game. And if Albany can score in that 12-13 sweet spot, I think they're in it. They're hanging in that game. But their speed, Simmons off the ball, or not off the ball, but when he was trying to hold the ball and kill time off the clock and he was getting swarmed by multiple SEALs, like That was big time stuff. Like that's championship level stuff. That's the stuff that you don't see when you see, oh, look, he scored 5, had 5 goals, 5 assists, 10 points, best rookie mark since John Tavares in 1992. But the way he played to play keep away at the end of the game, like that won't show up on the stat sheet. Like that's the kind of stuff that Albany has to have carry over. And I'm curious as to what Buffalo's plan is going to be for that.
My key for the Bandits to win, obviously, Matt Vince has got to be Matt Vince, but I think Buffalo's had some issues this year with discipline and being in the box too much, and that's what got them in trouble against the Rock in the second game. They were in the box, in the penalty box, most of the first half, and the Rock were 3 for 5 or 3 for 6. Second half, they only took 1 or 2 penalties, and when they're playing even strengths, I think the Buffalo Bandits are a very dangerous team when they're playing full strength. So I think the key for the Bandits is special teams. Stay out of the box, and when they do get their power play opportunities, to capitalize. So I think special teams is going to be huge for the Buffalo Bandits against Albany as well.
Yeah, and that's what I brought that up earlier. That's been a huge component to these playoffs. Albany's execution on the power play and in the penalty kill has been outstanding. And they were dead last in both when it came to power play percentage and their penalty kill. It just wasn't doing the job. Now, they didn't commit a lot of penalties compared to the rest of the league. They were like middle of the pack. So they weren't quite, it wasn't really based on the fact they went 11-7. It didn't totally do them in, right? They still won 11 of their 18 games. And they're 3-0 in this postseason run. So in Albany's case, to your point, Albany's got to stay out of the box because Buffalo can pick you apart. And I think the way Buffalo plays on the PK as well, they hold it down. They really contain, fill the box, and they build basically a 4-man, 4-square wall around Vince to make it so, all right, if we're down a man, and that's the key. Like Albany's success early in the year, that 6-0, they were rifling shots from the outside. Like Simmons had his breakout, his come to the league moment when he scored. I think he had 5 against Buffalo back in week 2. It was the Bandits' first game, Albany's second. They had won in Vegas in week 1. So that second week of December, Simmons was ripping them from outside. Can Albany get goals in front, cutting off ball, good off ball movement, and then create shots in front of the goal? That will be important too. Because I think the outside looks, Buffalo will have a plan.
Finally, before we wrap this up, Brandon,
Sure.
quickly, what kind of a crowd are you expecting for Game 1 Friday night at the MVP Arena? And has indoor box lacrosse taken off in Albany yet?
The crowds have been good in Albany this postseason run. It was really neat when they played San Diego on that Sunday afternoon game. It's not a sellout. It's not Banditland, but that's the goal. Like if you're a team in Albany, Rochester, but more so because Rochester's been around. I know they've the whole thing with Halifax relocating, but taking the team, whatever, et cetera, et cetera. It takes time to build it. Buffalo, Banditland wasn't built in one night, just like Rome wasn't built in a day. It's cliche, but it's true. Ultimately, you want to get to that. But winning certainly gives the community some buzz. I would add, too, Albany men's lacrosse just made the men's NCAA tournament. The women were in the NCAA or in the America East championship game, all in the same weekend, last Sunday, or 2 Sundays ago. Now you got me confused, too, with what day of the week it is because of the bye week for both of these teams. But anyway, it was just, there was some buzz. And when you win, in theory, that would get folks, and I think like this league, it's like when a fisher finally gets a nibble or finally reels in a fish. That's the idea with the NLL. You get out to one game, then you want to go to another one, and then you want to go to more. And that's what this fan base, I think, has figured out. And it's a lot easier to get folks to want to come out to a game when you watch a winning product. And it was hard, when you consider this team moved from New England, you didn't have a season, so you're trying to market a new franchise during a pandemic. So year 1, you're in the middle of a pandemic. Protocols were still pretty strict in that first year in 21-22. Then you win only 3 games last year, and never mind, you only won 3 games. Not surprising, because in a lot of cases, if you have a bad year like that, a lot of things didn't go well. They didn't win, but also they were injured. Their better players got hurt throughout the year. So you add all that up, like they haven't had a real fair shot based on the roster construction last year and how they wanted to kind of tinker with things. And then in year one, when you had Resiteritz, you had Q, you had O'Connor, Kieran McCardle, it just never, you were trying to build it through a pandemic and trying to get people to come out to the building. And it was hard to do that. The crowd in game 2 against San Diego, their chant, they all had in unison had a Dougie chant going. That was cool. They're picking up on the tendencies of the indoor game, like when you cheer, when you don't cheer. The music is certainly an element when they're on offense. There was a defense chant, which was pretty neat. And then they all lost their minds at the end of the game. The way their 2 home games ended were very similar because Halifax had a guy go to the penalty box, David Brock in the stands. Then you have what happened with Stotts and Anthony Jochum. You got the players fired up from one team, the initiator in San Diego. Then you've got the Albany players coming to bat for their teammate. And that gives the crowd something to glue their eyes on and go, whoa, what's going on? Wait a minute. Like, why are you going after our guy? Speaking as if I was a fan in the crowd. So very similar endings to their closeout games, the quarterfinal and then game 2 against San Diego. So it kind of galvanized and of course, at that moment they're winning. And then you're putting in Colton Watkinson in 3 consecutive games and scoring empty net goals. I mean, those are fun because you know you have the games in hand. When you win the way they won and you kind of sense it with about 4 or 5 minutes left and you can feel it in the building, that all matters. So it's been pretty cool to watch the ascension. And again, it's going to take time. What did Glenn Clark use the line? It's not going to be a waterfall. It's going to be it's going to be a couple of dumps of water. It's going to be sprinkles of getting people to buy into it, but winning certainly helps. And I know why you're asking the question though, because I think the Bandits fans travel well. And I think that is excellent news from a league perspective. I think that's good for Albany. You're going to sell a bunch of tickets for game 1. Banditland travels tremendously, especially because this weekend it will be a Friday, Saturday back-to-back. I think that's intriguing. Like, I would hope some folks in Albany they'll make the commute to Buffalo for game 2. I think that's all good things. In Albany, for a while, I felt they were actually earlier in the year better on the road than they were at home in some cases. I think they understood that there's more. We were talking about this earlier. I'm kind of happy you brought it up. Like, there's more of an attention to detail when you know you've got to be completely dialed in when the atmosphere is not on your side. So it's nothing they haven't faced to this point. In that crowd in San Diego, I thought in game 1 of the semifinal was a good test for Albany to understand, but nothing compares to Banditland, and nothing compares, I think, to what they are doing in Vancouver and Calgary. They do a pretty good job with their home fan bases as well. And I don't mean to leave any out. Colorado does a fine job as well with some of their atmospheres at home. So, from what I've heard, Buffalo's there's going to be a contingent of Buffalo fans. I think there were about 500 in that first that regular season meeting back in December. Wouldn't shock me if there was a couple thousand Buffalo fans there, but I think it's all good news for a league that is still growing, getting new folks to tune in, and especially new folks in these NLL markets that are still trying to get familiar and understanding of the box game. I think it's all good stuff. And I think the Buffalo fans, I really believe this. I think when Buffalo came to MVP Arena in December, I think it helped teach Albany fans this is how they go about their chants, or how to react when there's a power play or when we're on the penalty kill. Like, when you cheer, obviously you cheer when there's a goal scored, but in those other moments, those in-between moments of a 60-minute game, when to appropriately get loud, kind of lay off, like just the all in good fun, but like clean banter. I mean, like the banter of when you get involved and you heckle somebody, whatever it may be. So I think it's fascinating. I think it's going to be fun. I think it's going to be really good. I think it's going to be a good series. I hope it goes 3. I think it would be, just as a consumer, it would be fun if it goes 3, but should be good. I think the crowds are going to be good. And Buffalo will be great Saturday. I mean, come on. They've been selling out the arena down the stretch in the regular season, right? They were selling out. They're getting 17,000 plus in there. So it's going to be good. It's going to be good.
Are you going to be doing, obviously, game 1? Are you going to be coming up to Buffalo Saturday night for game 2?
No, I will not. TSN has got the full coverage of the series. So you got John Abbott, Patty Gregoire.
They do a great job, both of them. And Pat's the one that got me into the National Lacrosse League, along with the voice of the Bandits, John Gertler too, by the way, and I'm hoping one day he wins the Tom Borelli Award, because John, to me, is one of the biggest reasons I became a Bandits, being involved with the Bandits, but also a lacrosse league fan as well. And he's one of the best broadcasters in the league as far as I'm concerned.
The biggest compliment I think you can get in John Gertler being in the league since really it started, right, and being in Buffalo, I think the best compliment you can get is when you put a game on and Buffalo's home, it's like you hear it and feel that, oh, it's a John Gertler game. Like, that's the best compliment you can get as an announcer. Like, oh, it's John Gertler game. Like that, if that as a consumer outside of the game, you come for the game and then you stay for little fun factors like that. And I think that's what John's established. So yeah, John's, I saw John back in December. I've seen him at other games in the past in Buffalo. He's great. And yeah, Patty Greg War is he's a gem. John and Greg do, John and Pat do a great job.
And by the way, I want to say congrats to Adam Levy for winning the Tom Borelli Media Award. And Adam's been on my show a couple times. And Brandon, people like yourself, John, Pat, have been really great with me, because I've only been following this league for 2.5 years and I'm still learning. And everybody treats me like I'm part of their family in this league. And I really enjoy the National Lacrosse League. And I'm very lucky to be able to cover a franchise such as the Bandits.
I think it's, I can relate to you in a way, because, I got my start in the league in 2017-18 season. So in 18, when the league was doing games on, they did like a Twitter game of the week. I had some contact with some folks in the league. They were looking to do another package. They were just, changing and tweaking their broadcasts and trying to do more. And I had some college lacrosse experience at the time. I did some pro outdoor. I had no box lacrosse background at all, but they were like, hey, like, you're in. And I was like, great. And I know at the time when I first entered, I was not as qualified as other people that had been in the league, such as your Teddy Jenners and your Jake Elliott's and your Brad Challoners and Craig Rabinski. Like, go down the list of guys that have been John Gertler, guys that have been in the league longer than I have. But Brian Shanahan, who does the color in Toronto, does IL indoor stuff. Shanny was he was the best guy ever to do.
Terrific guy. He's been on my show 3 times.
He is fantastic. He is a gem. I loved I traveled with Shanny that whole year. And that was how he was my walking encyclopedia. He just, and not even like the games themselves, like just like travel and how this staff is and how they do things here in Sask and how they do it in Calgary and how they do it in Buffalo. It was really neat. And then that kind of paved way for me to get involved in a specific market. I live in the Boston area, so I went and did the games in New England. And the funny thing is, I was in the league for like 2 years. I never met Glenn Clark. I was like, oh yeah, Glenn Clark, just you do your work. Okay, Glenn Clark's the head coach, and like Glenn Clark is one of the best guys. I think he's the best head coach in my career of doing games in different leagues and different sports. He's one of the best guys who I ever speak to. He gets it. He's an open book, but he's just very like, I don't know. It's just, he's very
approachable.
Charismatic. Yeah.
Approachable.
Very much so. So I hear you, man. It's like, we're like fans. You get the bug, you get in it and you're like, this is a good product. It's a good product. And I hope these finals, live up to that. And I know Albany's kind of this like darling that no one knows much about. They're still kind of a newer franchise and they're young. They don't have the star power compared to Buffalo, but they've got some dudes that are going to be, they're trying to be what those guys are now, which is, hey, we got Simmons, we got Kurtz, we're getting Dyson Williams, we have Doug Jamieson, we got Nick Tchaikovsky, I didn't even mention John Wagner's name. Should have brought him up too. He's had a phenomenal postseason. Like, I knew by bringing up names, I was going to forget a couple guys that have had unbelievable years. But yeah, that's what's fascinating. Like, Albany's trying to make it their time now. They're like the young up and comer. And then you've got a Buffalo team that's been there. But this kind of matchup almost gives you like a
boxing match. It's like the underdog, Rocky against Apollo. It's kind of like the underdog against the favorite.
Yeah, it's kind of like, historically, it's kind of reminds me of like an NFL opening night game. You've got the reigning champions against like this young team that you don't really like. It almost reminds me of like when we saw the Lions play the Chiefs.
And Ed Harrell. Yeah.
but now here they are. They're in the finals. Pretty incredible the year. And both teams. Like I said, all it takes in Buffalo, you win that one, and then you're like, all right, we're good. And you've been to 3. Imagine they didn't win it last year. I mean, geez,
they start talking about them like the Buffalo Bills, the 4 Super Bowls in a row.
Yeah, that's great. It's great. It's a good point.
Winning a championship changes everything. Your perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm being a little biased here on predictions. I'm just going to give Buffalo the edge because of their depth and experience. But I wouldn't be shocked if Albany did win this series. I'm going to go with Buffalo to win this series, and I wouldn't be surprised if it goes 3 games. Brandon.
Yeah, I mean, trust me. I fully understand why Buffalo is the favorite in this. How can you not? Like, totally makes sense. Like, why would you count these guys out? But I mean, Albany's had the house money, nothing to lose. Like, I'm just saying, like, these guys play fearlessly, and they are like, hey, no one thought we'd be here, so why not go out and win the thing? So they took down 2 giants, like
absolutely
from like a league-wide perspective. Like, you took down 2 teams that have had top-tier roster construction. They get free agents. They've drafted well. They have some household names that they just beat in a series, and then the one and done spot against Halifax. So only gets more challenging here, but it would be a hell of a story if you knock off Halifax, San Diego, and Buffalo to win a championship. That is no easy feat if you do that.
Just like what the Chiefs did this year, winning the Super Bowl. Miami, at Buffalo, at Baltimore, and then San Francisco. To me, that was their most impressive Super Bowl win was this year. But John Tavares, to me, is going to be an X factor because I think he's the best coach in lacrosse, and he's like the Wayne Gretzky of the game. And I just think he's going to have some new wrinkles for Albany that they haven't seen yet. That's how I feel about it.
And John deserves a ton of credit. I mean, I remember doing some of the Buffalo game. He was feeling like, never mind the players and the expectations they had for themselves. Like, John was feeling it too a bit, before they won it. Like, John Tavares is a winner. Like, he's not okay with getting to a finals and say, oh, we had a good year. Like, no, like he's a competitor, and we watched, he played in the league, in the 90s and early 2000s. Like, he expects to win every single week. And every single year when they're in the final, whether it's the top 8 and you're in the final 4, you're in the championship series, like, oh yeah, like.
And the reason I compare the Bandits to the Patriots is because from what I see, they got their star players, Buffalo, but they play as a team. It's about the team concept. Like New England, they had Brady, Gronk, they had some talented players, but it was always the team first mentality. And that's where I see similarities between Tavares' Bandits and Belichick's Patriots.
Mm-hmm. And I think John, because of his, and I think that's why Glenn Clark has buy-in too, because of his history being in the league and having been a championship player. Same with John. Players respect that. Like, oh, you played in the league. You know what it takes. You've won at this level before. So now John's team's a lot different because they're older and they've been in the league. They've played for him now for multiple years. There were some years there in Buffalo when the Albany franchise was still in New England. They were falling short of expectations. They were, I think there was a year they were like 4-14. They had a down year, but keep in mind again that they were younger. That's changed now. Like, you got Dane Smith, Josh Byrne now, and I don't know it off the top of my head, but I would imagine like 6th, 7th year in the league now. Like, you're far along, where you're 6 or 7 years in, you're 30 years old. You're about in your prime of your career.
Yeah.
So when you have that, when you have a former player and a champion as your coach, I think there's some leniency to get on your guys. And I think John's got that pull with his team to be critical and to tell them like it is. And Glenn Clark, I think, has had moments like, you got to be careful with young teams. You don't want to lose you don't want to hurt their confidence, right? Because like they've asked a lot of their young team. I mentioned the Ethan Walker component. Like, Ethan Walker, the way he's assumed a leadership role, if he's not as mature as he is to handle that from a mental standpoint, physical standpoint, they wouldn't be where they are. So they just keep raising the bar every week in terms of how they challenge their team. So this was fun, though. Thanks for having me on. I'm very bummed out about this, but I will not be able to attend any of these finals games. I've got other work going on. It just worked out. They moved. So the game 3 was supposed to be the 24th and they moved it. If it went to game 3 in Albany, I was going to be there. I was like, perfect. This works out with my schedule. I got something this Friday. I got a wedding Saturday, so I can't go to Buffalo. And then I got to work. I'm doing WNBA now. Season starts this week. And it's just the 2 dates for game 1 and game 3. I've got games and you got to pay the bills, man. You got to pay the bills. You got to work. So.
Absolutely. Next time I have you on, Brendan, I want to talk to you about the WNBA expanding to Toronto and if you feel it'll be successful here as well.
Yeah, it's
definitely
all ties in.
Brandon, I'm going to let you go, but I want to say thank you for coming on. Where can my audience again follow you on social media, your website, and good luck to your Boston Celtics and your Bruins, who are, I think, playing in Florida tomorrow night. And the Red Sox are playing good baseball. They're 21-19 right now.
They're hanging in there.
They're hanging in there.
Yeah, they are. They're making it so we can have a baseball season. Brendan Glasheen on Twitter and BJ_Glash on the Instagram is where people can find me. Chris.
All right. Well, Brandon, I want to say thank you so much for coming on here. I really enjoyed talking to you, and I will send you an audio and video copy of our show and a couple of clips as well. And I'm excited about going to game 2 this Saturday night in Bandit Land and just experiencing the NLL finals. And we'll definitely keep in touch with you. And I want to say thank you so much for coming on my 397th show tonight.
Holy cow, 397.
And it's also on WQEE 99.1 FM in Noonan, Georgia. So in Georgia Swarm territory.
There you go, Chris. Great work. Thanks for having me on. I'm happy to do it.
Thank you so much. Have a great night, Brandon. And we'll talk to you soon.
You too. Thank you.
Thanks. Good night. All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed season 8, episode 12 tonight with Brendan Glasheen, the ESPN National Lacrosse League play-by-play announcer. He also does some play-by-play announcing. Brandon does for the G League's Maine Celtics, the farm team for the Boston Celtics, who are playing Cleveland tonight in game 4, and I think they're winning. And Brandon also does some play-by-play announcing for the the WNBA's Connecticut Sun, and he's also on 98.5, the Sports Hub in Boston. And again, I want to say congratulations to Adam Levy, the National Lacrosse League Media Person of the Year. He won the Tom Borelli Award, and Adam's been on my show a number of times. Congratulations to Adam. And Pat Gregor, who's been on my show a number of times, has won it as well. And I'm hoping next year, John Gerkler, the voice of the Buffalo Bandits, gets this award next year in 2025 as well. The NLL finals start Friday night, May 17th, 7 o'clock. Game 1 at MVP Arena in Albany. Game 2 will be at the KeyBank Center in Buffalo at 7:30. You can get tickets at bandits.com, or you can check out the website nationallacrosseleague.com. And after the game 3 of this NLL finals, which could easily happen, it's been moved to Saturday, May 25th at 5 o'clock at the Albany MVP Arena as well. Guys, before we wrap up our show, I was at the Toronto Argonauts CFL training camp today at the University of Guelph Alumni Stadium, and I had the pleasure of doing 2 interviews, but I'm going to air one of them tonight. And he's was a member of the national champion Michigan Wolverines football team last year, and I'm really looking. I hope you guys enjoy my interview with wide receiver Zach Peterson, who the Argos just signed recently from the national champion Michigan Wolverines. He was kind enough to speak with us this morning at Alumni Stadium at the University of Guelph. This is Zach Peterson, courtesy of my YouTube channel, and make sure you hit the subscribe notification. Good morning, everybody. Chris Palme here, a radio host of Live with CDP Sports Talk on WQEE 99.1 FM in Noonan, Georgia, the home of Southern Talk in sports. I'm here at Alumni Stadium at the University of Guelph this morning for day 2 of the CFL training camp for the Toronto Argonauts. I have a special guest with us this morning. He's a member of the 2023 National Football Champion Michigan Wolverines, and he's here with the Argos in camp. His name is Zach, and Zach Peterson, and we're gonna bring him on right now. Good morning, Zach. How you doing?
Great. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you so much for doing this. Congratulations on winning, being a part of the national champion Michigan Wolverines last year.
Thank you so much. It was an incredible honor to be a part of that football program and to go out, win a national championship, bring one home for the Wolverines, celebrate in Ann Arbor with everyone, the fans, my teammates, my brothers. So I'm just blessed and honored to be a part of it.
Thoughts on head coach Jim Harbaugh?
Oh, Coach Harbaugh, I mean, I've loved him. The most amazing coach I've ever played for, treated every player with respect. He did what he said, and he said what he did. He was honorable, respectful, and loved us like his own son. I have nothing but the utmost respect for Coach Harbaugh.
What was it like at your time at the University of Michigan and the fan base there and playing at the Big House in Ann Arbor?
It was amazing. I mean, anytime you get in front of 110,000 people, it's going to be fun. It's going to be rowdy. That atmosphere was amazing, like unimaginable. And those Michigan Wolverines fans, they travel well for the Rose Bowl and for the national championship. Loved having them there, and we love all the support. I get people coming up to me all the time in the airport saying like, oh, my husband's 86, 87, 88 years old, and he recorded all y'all's games every single week, watched them 3 times before the next one happened, and he was so happy when y'all won. And it means the world to all of us, the support, and we're just so blessed to be able to do that for the fans this year and win a national championship and bring it home.
Can you tell my audience here a little bit about yourself? And did you know much about the CFL before coming up here?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia. My dad actually played in the league down south for 13 years. He was a kicker. So football has been a part of me since I was born. I slept with a football when I was younger. And then he played at the University of Georgia, and my mom went there. And so we would go up to games in Athens, and I knew I wanted to play football from the day I was born. So I went to Furman University. It's in South Carolina. And actually my coach there, my receivers coach, his name is Brian Bratton. He taught me almost everything about how to be a young man and how to be a great football player in my early days. And he played for Montreal for a while. He won 2 Grey Cups, an absolute dog, a baller. He's with the Colts now. He's offensive quality control. And I was just talking to him the other day, actually, about it when I signed with Toronto to come up here. So that was super cool to have somebody that I love and respect give me some words of encouragement and words of wisdom before I came up here. And then after Furman, I graduate transferred to Michigan. Had the best 2 years of my life, obviously. And now we're here, and I'm just blessed and honored to be here, part of the Argos.
Just quick thoughts on the Toronto Argonauts and day 2 of training camp here. And what are some adjustments from being in the college game to the pro game, especially in the CFL, being 3 downs instead of 4?
Absolutely. Adjustments from college to pro. To be honest, Coach Harbaugh treated us like pros. He treated us like men. Like if we respected him, he respected us, and that's how it was. And so it felt very professional there, and there hasn't been much change since coming here. It's just an age difference at this point. The vets, you got to love and respect them because those guys have earned it. Now you got to earn it yourself. And that's how it is. You got to make your way up the totem pole. And then 3 downs instead of 4, that was weird. I'm not going to lie. So you technically have 2 downs because unless you're going for it on 3rd down. So you got 2 downs to get a 1st down. It puts a little bit more stress on your offense, but that just means your playmakers have got to rise up and make plays. And then there are some other nuances like the waggle, the forward motion has been super fun for me to get involved with because down south, everything is based off steps as a receiver. It's straight from the line of scrimmage, or you might be motioning, but it's still steps based. 4 outside, 4 inside, 7 steps, 3 steps. So it's been different. Now it's just once you hit a certain yard mark between an area, that's when you break your route, or that's when you're on your route from. So it's been super cool. I've had a lot of fun with it so far. I'm just excited to get out there and get to preseason 1, but can't get ahead of myself. Just take each day by day.
Just 2 quick questions for you. What's one word to describe yourself as a football player, and what's a fun fact about Zach Peterson that fans might not know about?
Okay. One word to describe me as a football player, I'm going to combine hard and working. So hardworking. I think that's who I am. I think that's who I always have been. I'm going to outwork you. And I'm just going to make myself, put myself in a better position than anybody else could be because I'm just going to keep working hard. My business, keep working hard. It's something my dad taught me. And then at Michigan, we had blue collars wherever we went anywhere. 'Cause just hard work. That's what it's all about. And then one thing people might not know is I've actually hiked Mount Kilimanjaro in Africa. So that'd be my fun fact.
And finally, where can my audience follow you on social media if you're on there?
Absolutely. All my social media is the letter J, Zach, Z-A-C-H, Peterson, Peterson.
All right. Well, Zach, I want to say thank you. And one thing I wanted to do is that Hail to the Victor song. I want to say thank you so much for that national championship. And Zach, thank you so much for giving us some time this morning. And as always, go blue.
Go blue.
Thank you so much, Zach. Continued success with the Toronto Argonauts here in training camp.
Thank you.
That was Zach Peterson from the Toronto Argonauts. He was a member of the Michigan Wolverines last year, and the Argonauts just signed him. And I want to wish Zach Peterson all the best in his CFL career with the Toronto Argonauts. And again, I want to say thank you to Zach and JJ McCarthy and Blake Corum and those Michigan Wolverines for that tremendous 2023 15-0 season as well. Guys, my next show, before we announce my next show, I did another interview today with Isaac D'Arcangelo, a linebacker out of Illinois. So my next episode, I'm going to air that interview with Isaac D'Arcangelo from the Toronto Argonauts, who's a linebacker out of Illinois. And it's been a great opportunity being able to do some freelance independent media work covering the Toronto Argonauts, who are having their training camp at Guelph. And during the week, fans are encouraged to come out to Alumni Stadium. Their practices are usually normally from about 9 a.m. normally until about 12 o'clock noon, depending on the weather situation too as well. And they have a brand new stadium, not a brand new stadium, but a brand new field turf at Alumni Stadium, which you need to check out as well. Before we get to my next show, I got some sports scores. Dallas, Colorado are scoreless in the first period. Stars lead that series 2-1. Carolina, down 3-0 in the series to the Rangers, has beaten the Rangers for the second straight time. Tonight they beat the Rangers 4-1. So there's going to be a 6-game in Carolina, and the Rangers now are under a lot of pressure. So 4-1 Carolina. Dallas, Colorado are scorers in the first. And the NBA, we've got Dallas 32-26 over Oklahoma City, 9:52 to go in the second quarter. And then the Boston Celtics, who play better on the road, have beaten Cleveland again, 109-102. The Celtics are now up 3-1 in that series and can wrap it up Game 5 in Boston. I wouldn't be shocked if Cleveland wins Game 5 in Boston and gets it back to a Game 6, but we'll see what happens there as well. And that's the thing about sports. You just never know. Just like Florida's up 3-1 on Boston, but I wouldn't be shocked tomorrow night if the Bruins beat Florida right in Florida and get it back to a Game 6 at the TD Garden as well. So my next live with CDP Sports Talk, sponsored by BarryCullen.com, is going to be this Thursday, May 16th at 12 p.m. My special guest is going to be Susan Rose from WBEN 930 Radio in Buffalo, New York. She is a radio personality and a co-host, a co-anchor of a new morning program on WBEN weekdays from 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. So we're going to talk to Susan Rose about her career in the radio industry, being interdicted into the Buffalo Broadcasters Association Hall of Fame in 2022, and some of the latest news going on in the city in Buffalo right now as well. So Susan Rose from WBEN 930 in Buffalo will make her first appearance on Live with CDP Sports Talk Thursday, May 16th at 12 p.m. Eastern. And as always, guys, just to let you know, I do volunteer work with the Cambridge and District Humane Society at 1650 Dunbar Road in Cambridge, Ontario, 519-623-7722, or visit their website at cambridgehumanesociety.org. They're doing a once-a-month 50-50 raffle draw, and you can get tickets through their website again at cambridgehumanesociety.org. The money for the 50-50 draw goes to all the shelters programs that look after our homeless furry friends down there as well. And by the way, guys, I love doing volunteer work down at the Cambridge District Humane Society. They always can look for more help with volunteers or food donations as well. And there's a number of dogs down there that are looking for their forever families and homes. Clifford, Cleo, Alpine, Rosemary. You can check their profiles out on CambridgeHumaneSociety.org. And remember to check them out on TikTok and their social media platforms. And please consider buying a 50-50 ticket on their website again at CambridgeHumaneSociety.org. Or you can go into the office at 1650 Dunbar Road in Cambridge and get your tickets there as well. Live with CDP Sports Talk is a weekly sports and entertainment talk show hosted by yours truly, Chris Pame. Is on weeknights from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern on WQEE 99.1 FM, The Key, the home of Southern sports and talk, the heartbeat of Atlanta. Our radio station's website is WQEEFM.radio12345.com. Live with CDP Sports Talk is live streamed on these platforms: YouTube, Facebook, Twitter /X, Twitch, LinkedIn, and now available on Instagram, Chris Pame, and hit the follow notification. And also, guys, if you're looking for a personalized video message from yours truly, check out my profile at cameo.com, and type in Chris Pame. All the proceeds from the personalized video message will go to my radio and media work as well. So again, Live with CDP is on cameo.com. Just type in Chris Pame on cameo.com. Also, guys, I have my own website. Check out my website at beacons.ai/Chris D. Pame. All my social media sites, all my previous radio shows, all my digital media work is on there, including WordPress and some of my game night stories as well. I've been doing the last couple of years as well. Live with CDP Sports Talk, again, is brought to you by Barry Cullen Chevrolet Dealership at 905 Woodlawn Road West in the Guelph Auto Mall. Check out barrycullen.com for the newest selection of new and pre-owned GM vehicles, or give them a call at 519-824-0210, or email them at info@barrycullen.com. Speaking of Barry Cullen Chevrolet right now, 0% financing for up to 60 months, or $10,000 off select Silverado 1500 crew cabs. More details available at barrycullen.com. Also, guys, I am a content creator and I am on TikTok. I've been on TikTok now going on 4 years. Check me out at Live with CDP. And remember to hit that follow notification, and I post all my player and coaches interviews there as well. And I want to say thank you to my 2,100 plus followers on TikTok. StreamYard is the official live stream provider of Live with CDP Sports Talk. If you're into webinars or podcasting, check out StreamYard.com. They have basic free plans or semi-pro plans. I'm on the professional plan currently, $49 US a month. And if you're a business that does a lot of webinars or live streaming for your business, check out StreamYard.com and contact the sales department as well. And I've been with StreamYard for 3.5 years, and they have a great live streaming service, and they do have good customer service, and their IT people are there 24/7 to assist you if you need any help or whatever with your live stream. Finally, Live with CDP Sports Talk, the audio version is available on these platforms: iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts for now, soon to be YouTube Music, Spotify for podcasters, Apple Podcasts, Breaker, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, Spotify, Castbox, LinkedIn, Pandora, and Tuned In. Finally, you guys can email or text Live with CDP Sports Talk at cpame19@gmail.com, or text the show at 519-820-7188. Any comments, questions, suggestions, feedback, positive or negative, would be greatly appreciated as well. And that's about it, guys. I want to say thank you to my guest tonight, Brandon Glasheen from 98.5, the Sports Hub in Boston, and the ESPN National Lacrosse League play-by-play announcer for coming on here tonight. Sorry, guys, I'm still battling a cold. And I want to say thank you, everybody, for watching this live stream and also on audio platforms and listening to this episode on WQEE 99.1 FM in Noonan, Georgia, brought to you by Barry Cullen Chevrolet. Finally, the next live with CDP Sports Talk again, guys. Join me this Thursday, May 16th, 12 p.m. Eastern, with my guest, Susan Rose from WBEN 9:30 a.m. in Buffalo. Guys, I want to say thank you to everyone watching and listening to Live with CDP Sports Talk, and we'll see you Thursday at 12 o'clock with Susan Rose again from WBEN 9:30 in Buffalo. Have a great night. Have a great night, everybody, and hopefully my cold will be gone by Thursday. Thanks for watching and listening to Live with CDP Sports Talk.